I remember my first tech job like it was yesterday. I walked in on my first day and I was just so nervous. I know that I was a CCNP and a CCDP and an MCSC, but I was nervous because I knew what there was in certification. And I knew in my heart, reality and certifications were two separate worlds, which I learned time and time and again in my career. But I went on that first day and it was unique because I was from the medicine world. We all communicated and talked to each other in full sentences. Yes, we had our industry terminology that we'd use, but we communicated in simple and plain language. There was a lot of dialogue. And on my first day, I walked in and everybody was just glued to the computers and literally staring at computer screens. And it was literally like they were just staring at screens all day long. And that was a little bit new for me. I remember on my first day, I went and took about 50 people out to lunch. And I thought, I better win some friends here as fast as possible because I don't even know what I don't know. I've never worked in tech before. This is my first tech job. My last tech job was practicing internal medicine. So totally out of tech, and I was just scared. But, I found that I went into work, and each day I went home and I'd read about 1,000 pages a day out of the CCIE curriculum. And the next day I would read another 1,000 pages, and the next day I'd read another 1,000 pages. And I remember I was so worried about not being great that I would literally spend 4 to 6 hours every night when I got home from work studying and reading those 1,000 pages. I would do labs every Saturday and Sunday. I rented a CCIE rack every Saturday and Sunday for 6 months just so I felt like I would be capable. Something was odd though. In about a month or two of really practicing like that, I had said to my manager, I said, look, I want to do this CCIE. Can I borrow some routers and switches from the company WorldCom? We've got a lot of them. And my manager dumped literally 20 routers on my desk and a couple of switches on my desk. And I built my own CCIE lab. And in between calls and installations and troubleshooting, I would go and do another lab. I would stay 8 hours late each day and do more labs. After a month or two, you know what happened? All the people were coming to my cube and I was tutoring people in BGP and OSPF and EIGRP and this thing called data link switching process where we were bridging mainframe traffic over the internet or the intranet. It was just really cool. And I was teaching and teaching and teaching. And I found that not only did I love tech, I really love teaching. And I actually started tutoring people at that first tech job so many years ago. And it was one of the most fun things of my life. So let's talk about my career, at least once I went into technology. I started my career at MCI WorldCom, and let me tell you, it was a really great tech company. But something felt a little fishy there. Some of the executives came in and something just didn't make me comfortable. So I left WorldCom, went to Wall Street, where I was the lead network architect at the largest market maker on the NASDAQ. It was Knight Securities. Loved working there. It was an eclectic group of people. My manager was a physicist, for example, with a PhD in physics. Everybody was a scientist. And what did we do? We created the world's fastest trading platform. And here's the thing. At this company, it was all about the tech, the tech, the tech, the tech, the tech. Because they were doing this pre-programmed algorithmic black box trading nearly 20 years ago before anybody else was doing it. There were all these PhD mathematicians and physicists, and they were just coding their own things, and it was really, really great. And because, a nanosecond was a competitive advantage, we got to play with the coolest technology ever. I remember here, times were so good that, you'd stay till 6 o'clock at night, you would take the limousine home, they would bring in food for you. Times were really, really great. And I really loved it. But here was the thing. It was really far away from my home. I was commuting 2+ hours in each direction, and I just didn't really enjoy the commute. Loved the people, loved the tech, and there was that. So for a very short time, I got a job as a principal to architect at Comcast, responsible for designing their backbone. And, well, I was not there long. It was a place, they were nice people, but they were so slow moving. And, me, I was wound tight, I was excited to do stuff, and I just wasn't feel like I was doing it there. So I got a call from this company called Riverstone Networks. This guy calls me, his name was Joe, he was a master sergeant from the Marine Corps. We instantly spoke and hit it off. He had a question with me. Then he had sent me to the LSPF guy to ask me some questions. And then the BGP guy asked me some questions, and they literally flew me to California for this 8-hour grueling interview. We did BGP questions, literally speaking, for an hour straight. Finally, the last question, I think it was about 67 BGP questions, and we get to this one, and this guy Kumar was asking me what was inside this message header. And I remember saying, Kumar, I'm sorry, I just don't know. And he starts laughing to me, and he says, Mike, I've never taken a BGP interview this far, but I wanted to see what would happen if you didn't know something. So I was going to give you something I figured no one would know unless they actually wrote the BGP code on a router. And I wanted to see that you weren't going to bluff or lie to me because I can't have liars on my team. And I was like, no. I told him I didn't know, and he was thrilled. I got hired there. Let me tell you, I started out as a principal engineer or consulting systems engineer or whatever it was at the time. Was there for a month. They did a 30% layoff. All of a sudden, I'm now a sales engineer, which was my new job title, which was really hilarious because after 3 months, I still never met my sales rep because I was traveling around the world doing IP multicast video solutions, which I loved. And I was at this company for about 13 layoffs. And let me tell you, I liked it. I stayed there because of the people. I loved the people that were there. And I still have a tremendous number of friends from that company that I still speak to every day, 20 years later. But the company was losing money. And, there were a couple things that I remember, but I had said to my manager, I said, I wanted to move into a leadership position. And he says to me, you're too valuable in your current role. I said, what? He said, you bring in like 20% of the company's revenue. He said, you're one of the few people that actually understand IP multicast, which is like the company's main business. And if you take a leadership position, we have no engineer that can do it. And you know what I said? Bye. And they said, what do you mean bye? I said, my engineering, you told me my engineering is so good that I can't move up. And they said, well, yeah, unfortunately. I said, if my being a capable engineer is causing me not to have the ability to move up, I'm out of here. So I left there and I went to Cisco. And let me tell you, Cisco was the best experience of my life. I didn't think I was going to like it. I remember saying to my manager, well, I'll call you 3 days from now. And if I don't like it, maybe I'll come back. But I got to give the 3 days a try. On the first day, I walked into the Cisco office and everybody was so nice to me. And I went, oh my God. On the second day, I got to go to dinner with the client and meet the client. And I was just so excited. I'm going through my paperwork and I'm like, wait, 4 weeks paid vacation, 10 days this amount of stock, this kind of this. And I went, this company really cares about its employees. I think I'm going to stay. And on the third day, John Chambers shows up and he addresses the office. And he starts talking and I see him speak and I say, oh my God, I have to be here. What a leader. So I worked in that job for about a year. It was a really good job. Told my manager I wanted to move into some executive things. I had some different things, and he sent me to lots of executive training. Lots of it. Leadership training, emotional intelligence training, business acumen training, CXO relevancy training, presentation training, writing training. I went to all of it. And then I interviewed for a job that was 3 levels above the one I had in another department, and I got it. And then what happened was you can't change departments and get 3 promotions at the same time. So they moved me over in a lateral thing, and I had to get a promotion once per year for the next couple of years to get to the level of the job that I just interviewed and got hired for, which they did, and it worked out really nicely. But in this position, everything changed for me. This position, I was a real enterprise architect, a real executive. And I built a business council of CIOs to tell us what they wanted in the healthcare space. I created a reference architecture for the entire healthcare industry. I was traveling 300,000 miles giving presentations. I'd be on Cisco SETV training the systems engineers and the sales reps. I'd be presenting at major conferences, writing thought leadership documents, shaping an industry. And I loved it. That was my first foray into true architecture. The leadership executive architecture where you start at the CEO and you find out what they need and then you solve their business problems, design things, present it back, help sell it. And I loved it. And my career was like this. It kept going up, and it was like a rocket ship. The more soft skills I learned, the faster it went up. The more emotionally intelligent I got, the better my career was. The more business acumen I learned, wow! Every leadership class, every sales class, whoa. It changed the way I walked, the way I talked, the way I dressed to be what I needed to be, and the career kept going. So, I wish that I didn't spend, so much time in the beginning focusing on the tech, because I got to the point where I was so good at it that when I wanted a promotion, my manager said, no, you're too good at the tech. And that's what I learned. Your tech skills only get you so far. And then I had a few other managers that said the same thing to me. They said, Mike, do you know the difference between that $150,000 systems engineer and that $300,000 enterprise architect? And I'd say, tell me. And they'd say, it's soft skills, emotional intelligence, it's leadership, it's business acumen. And they say, stop working on just the tech. It'll only get you far. It's like your IQ. Your IQ gets you to here, but your emotional intelligence gets you to here. And when they trained that for me, my life changed, my career changed, my salary tripled in a couple of years. All from learning the leadership skills that were a little different than the skills I previously had. And they were the high value skills. And that's why I teach those high value skills. And that's why when I teach those high value skills to people that have never even had a job, they get jobs that are more senior because the perception, the executive presence communication, they get taken more seriously, and employers desire that. So that's why we do what we do. And that's why I've always done what I've done. Those lessons, I try to share everything that I've learned to help others not make the same mistakes. I've had several mentors throughout my career, and let me tell you, mentorship is critical. The things those mentors have taught me have changed my life, and I have been mentoring people for decades because I think it's so valuable. I will tell you, in the beginning, I had some tech mentors. Hey, study this, study this, study this. And I will tell you, they made me a better technology professional. But here's the thing, it didn't help my career at all. In fact, I would study some more. And I did well in those days, but I studied. But I noticed that no matter what I did, my career was fine. I'm a principal, and then a principal engineer, and then an architect, but I wasn't really reaching those high levels. And finally, when I had a chance, what I actually did is I decided to follow one of the best business people I knew. Because I wanted to get into that business job, and I couldn't get there. I got a certification, and it made no difference. And then I started watching what the business executives did. And I started dressing like them, and I started talking like them, and I started saying, hey, this is the expert. Let me introduce you. No, this is the expert on this technology. And what I ultimately did was I became the facilitator. I started bringing in the best and brightest and adapting what they were doing, leading a team. And they started to do so well, and then people started to take notice. And it got me promoted to a team where I was designed to be an enterprise architect. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. And here's why. At the engineering level, there are some engineers and they start to do really well and they become something called a technical architect, which is not an architect at all. It's really an engineer that you want to give a better title to. So all the architects that I had known at that point were the technical architects, which were really engineers. And then I had a VP that said, I need you to be my architect. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, I need you to go out there and start speaking to CXO leaders. Find out what they want. Build a business council of CEOs and CIOs and CTOs. Have them tell us what they desire in the perfect technology solution. My manager said, look, I need you to shape the industry. I need you to write thought leadership documentation. I need you to present at every industry conference. I need you to speak to the press, Mike, and I need to get you on Cisco TV. And I went, uh-oh. Now I'm an architect, but I didn't really know what these were. So I found a coach and a mentor, and she's helped me more than I can possibly describe. She told me which courses to take, so I knew how to present like an executive. She helped me stand and present to have more executive presence. She helped teach me how to create the business numerics, the business value, and do some ROI modeling, things that just aren't taught in an MBA program. You wish there were, but she really brought me up another level. She worked on my writing to make it more executive-like. She guided me, and I'm going to tell you right now, she still guides me 15 years later. I consider myself so blessed to have my mentor and coach in my life. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not thankful to have her, because she's been with me for a while. But the key is mentorship is there, and here's why. We really need to be architects of our own career. But the problem is, Once you start getting deep in the weeds on something, you lose focus of the big picture. So I think it's always important to have a mentor, someone that's senior to you, someone that's got better experience than you did, someone that's farther along in your career, someone that's already made the mistakes that can say, hey, don't do this, and listen to them because they've already made it. So why repeat the same mistakes again and again? That's what a good mentor can do. I've taken people, they tell me where they want to go, and I get them there. But here's the reason I can get them there. I've already gotten there, and I know the steps to success to get there. And I'll tell you, one of the things I've noticed is from my world, we get mentors. Here's how I get mentors. I look for people way above me that have been much more successful than me, that have already made what my goals are. And then I say, how did you get there? And they're usually excited to share their steps. That good mentor teaches you how to get there. What do I not do? I don't ask my peers how to get there. And here's the reason why. If they knew how to get there, they'd already be there. And people ask me, Mike, my friends say that I should learn this. And I say, are your friends in that position? And they say, no. And I say, don't listen to them. What do the people in those positions say? They say, Mike, they say the same thing as you. I said, so don't listen to your friends that don't have the job. Listen to the people that do have the job. Here's the point. Mentorship is incredible. It makes the difference. I feel so strongly about it that I started a mentorship program. Look, we don't have just a regular educational training program. It's a mentorship program. We've got a family and a community across the globe. I teach classes and I get everybody to participate. I'm leading them into being the role. I ask questions in every class. I engage participation. We give projects to do it. And why do I do it? To make sure people are learning from the people that have already got there. That's the key secret to success. Don't make the mistakes again. The whole point of education is not to get a degree. It's so we can learn the things so we don't have to repeat the mistakes that other people mistaked along the way. We can get to the solution. That's why I love mentorship, and that's why I think it's so important. My initial coaching and mentoring was a lot different than it is today. Very different. I had grown up very poor and had no idea where I was supposed to be. I worked 80 hours a week as a paramedic to pay for my college tuition, became a nurse practitioner. In the end, I just really loved technology anyway, which is where my dream career was, which is where I stayed. But, along the way, there were just so many lessons learned. I think I'd been out there for about, a year in tech or less than that. And I literally started teaching people, BGP, OSPF. And how was I doing it? I was inviting them to my cube and I was explaining it with a whiteboard. And then we'd do a lab together. Then I would make them explain it back to me and describe what the technology was, how it worked, and why we use it. And people really got it. And then I would say to my students, now you gotta go teach this to somebody else right now. And they said, why? I said, in medicine, we see it, we do it, and we teach it to somebody else so we don't forget it. So that's initially what I was doing. And let me tell you, it was a unique process. I had people that wanted to become network engineers. So we'd be buying Cisco books. What I do, I would literally go through the book with them and say, you need to know this, 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 and this. And I would tutor them and teach them straight out of the book, and I would use the book. Well, the books were written by the technology vendors, so they were good. But, some of the stuff was really critically important, and some of the stuff was all over the place. And there are certain things that mattered. And since you can't learn everything, no matter how hard you try, I would really focus those people on the critical things. And when my students came out on the critical things, they were capable. They'd go on interviews and they would just win because they knew the critical things. But in the early days, I prepared people by making them super, super, super technically competent. And they started to get hired. And then I noticed there was the challenge. Those people that were the best technically couldn't communicate and they weren't getting hired. So the next thing I had to start doing was teaching interview coaching. So I started teaching reading body language. I started teaching people how to identify if we were dealing with visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. I started teaching the different personality types. I taught people neurolinguistic programming and psychology and the sociology. We were getting involved in the neurobiology of how people do things, and I was able to do that from my medical and psychological background, where I have a huge background. So I started to incorporate that. Then hired, and it was really fast. And then when my people got hired, here's what they started to do. They started calling me for career management. hey, Mike, I've had this job. And I'd say this, and this to your manager. And they'd call me back and they'd say, Mike, I got $50,000 of stock grants on a promotion. And I was like, well, yeah, here's what you need to do for your next 6 months. And they started rising to the occasions. And I had 24-year-olds in senior positions that they'd never have being less than 45 years old. But here's the thing. I met them when they were young. Some of them in high school. And by the time they were in high school, I was teaching them the senior skills. See, here's the thing. Everybody wants to focus on the tech. And what I learned in my career, it's not about the tech at all. It's about what the tech can do for the customer. So by teaching people how to use the tech, why the tech matters, what the technology can do for the customer, and then how to teach people how to communicate and present and sell. Not only my people were getting hired, but they were getting hired for pay scales that were way off the charts compared to the average. Because they were emotionally intelligent, they were good leaders, they communicated well, they had the business knowledge and acumen to prove why the technology would work, and they were wildly successful. So I've done that one-on-one for years. And why did I do it? Well, when I started, I spent a fortune on a whole bunch of certifications that were meaningless, and they didn't get me hired, but I found out what did, and as soon as I did really, really well. And then I wanted to help others because I just like to do that. Why do you think I started and used to practice internal medicine and became a nurse before that? It was because I wanted to help others, but I found I could help people build their careers in tech. And once I started teaching people, they're getting hired and getting hired and getting hired. And I really, really loved it. But there was one problem. There was only one of me. And I had to spend so much of my life doing physical therapy to regain my ability to walk that I only was able to coach people a little bit part-time, and I wanted to coach more, but I've got 20 years of success in getting people hired, doing it manually. One-on-one, have a discussion, use a little bit of the Socratic method, ask a question, make people respond back and answer it. Have people do a series of labs, and it's worked very, very good. But, it was one-on-one, and I was the limitation. So, hence the desire to start something on a larger scale. Early in my career, I thought to be an architect involved being the most technical person in the world. Well, that didn't get me an architect job at all. Here's what did. Taking a totally different approach. So when I started, I thought I could do the network, do the security, do all the cool data center stuff, do all this IAM stuff, all in one person. But what I learned in about a month is what I actually knew about everybody else's job was almost nothing. And when I tried to master all these things, in the end, it was like a joke. I had such topical surface level knowledge of everything. And in fact, I knew absolutely nothing. And I wasn't effective. So what I then did was focused on my specialty, which was networking. And, I mastered those critical things that were part of my networking career. And then I learned to be an architect. It's not about your tech skills at all. It's about how good of a team you can build. So, instead of trying to be the 50,000 person X-certified and know nothing about anything, know your craft well and build relationships with people. The first big architecture I had to do was a big voice over IP network with computer telephony integration for one of the world's biggest banks. And you know what I know about voice? Nothing. So here's what I did. I said to my manager, I said, how critical is this project, this architecture? And he said, consider it to be one of the most critical in the company. And I said, oh. I said, I don't know a lot about voice. And he said, I hired you because you're an architect. Architected. And I said to my manager, and I said, who can I call and get on my team? And my manager said, anybody that you could sell to get to work for you can help you design this architecture. I said to my manager then, I said, hey, can I reach out to the executives and ask for their support? And my manager said, of course you can. I said to my manager, can I go fly and meet some executives if I need to? And he said, book your tickets right now. So what I learned then was to build a team. And this was my first big architecture. So I called the best and brightest I could find. I sold them to go work on my team. I asked them what they wanted in their careers. And I said, work for me and I'll help you get there. And you know what? all those people that work for me, I helped them get to the next goal because I was always a good career coach and I knew how to do it. And I would get people, they would come in, they would build these architectures with me together. And on their architectures, I would help them too. And what I learned is my architectures were incredible. And here's why. They were always to work at 10 to 15 people, not one person. No one person can do everything. No one person can know everything. And if you try, you know nothing about anything. That's why doctors pick a specialty. And they make it a school for 17 years for one specialty because that's what it takes to know. So I really learned that. Here was the secret. Not being a one-person band, building a team. And then I really learned, how did I build my architecture career? Well, I built my leadership skills. I built my sales skills. I built my business acumen. I worked on my emotional intelligence. I worked on my ability to do ROI modeling. I worked on my executive writing and presentations and negotiation. Poof! I had a new career, and I was being paid double and triple what I had previously done. I was working half the hours. And when I go places, they would say, Mr. Gibbs, we're so excited to see you. Whereas when I was an engineer doing those engineering, all techie things, hey, yo, you're here. And it was a totally different world. So that was really what I learned in architecture was it's not about the tech. It's about the transformation you could do for your customer. What I learned was if you could guide your customer into making a better business decision that would improve their business, the customer would always buy your solutions. And again, your salaries would keep going up. So I learned all about solving customer problems. I learned about being creative, adapting, improvising, and overcoming challenges, business challenges. I learned the focus is never the tech. The focus is always the transformation. And that was what I did differently. So I would start with the executives and learn about their business. Figure out what they're trying to achieve. By the time I met to the technical professionals, I already knew what the company needed. And then I'd meet with the tech team to figure out what they had, to figure out how to design the best thing. Present it back to the customer, and they would almost exclusively buy it. And here's the reason. They knew we would solve their business problems. Here's the thing. Well, I used to like to buy computers. I still do. I got a dozen of them in my house. But here's the thing. I'm a techie. I like to play with tech. But businesses do not invest $200 million in tech because they think it's cool. They do it for a competitive advantage. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So that's why I've loved architecture, because it gave me a chance to marry the business and the technology in a near unlimitless career. But the key is, it's not based on getting 1 million certifications. This career is really about professional development, leadership, executive presence, communication skills, and leadership. That's what I've learned after 25 years in an architecture career.